So the other day, I finally saw The Backrooms. Now, this is a movie that I was particularly excited for even before I saw the first trailer. I have a deep affinity for video technology and video aesthetic ranging from about 1990 to maybe 2010. Also, I have a deep affinity with the lore that this comes from. So for those of you who don't know, The Backrooms was directed by a YouTuber named Kane Pixels, who was really famous for popularizing in 2020 or that era this particular storytelling type of lore around the backrooms, or specifically liminal photography or liminal concept. So in order to explain this a little bit better, we have to go back a bit more. There was a concept that really originated on 4chan with one particular photo that sort of started this concept of liminal space. A liminal space being something that is a transitional space, something that exists between times or between places. And often it is described as giving you a nostalgic feeling for somewhere that you have seen but know that you've never been. It looks familiar, but you know you've never been there. This is often things like malls, old movie theaters, anything that just feels like a weird, spooky nostalgia for a place that has very little or bizarre detail. And so that liminal space concept got really, really popular. And with that original photo generated a lore known as the Backrooms. Somebody talked about how they had found a backrooms to their store that was endless. And people started to piggyback off that concept. It ranged to talking about levels of the backrooms. And a lot of visual artists have taken that idea and run with it. Liminal space and the concept of the backrooms as this sort of like spooky copy pasta has really taken on a life of its own. And Kane Pixels in 2020, 2019, he began to create these really, really profound videos that got a lot of views with Blender. Now, he wasn't doing anything particularly unique, but he was really good at it, and he inspired a lot of further culture. So the backrooms and liminal concept also spawned this sort of idea of dreamscape, which is its own, maybe less spooky, more nostalgia kind of art style. Often you'll see this very well paired with this sort of like Windows XP style backdropping. A lot of times people have described dreamcore or liminal space as being the vision that you see in your eye doctor's test as being like the first liminal space that they were exposed to. And so you get a lot of this dreamcore visuals and aesthetics, which has then inspired a lot of dreamcore musicscapes, which are very liminal, very nostalgic. Famously, there's the underwater theme. There's also a lot of inspiration drawn from an aesthetic that is pulling from educational content from the late 90s, early 2000s called Utopian Scholastic. And that also gets combined into Dreamcore, which also gets combined into a lot of liminal and backrooms visuals and storytelling. So this is all important, I think, to know, or at least it makes the piece of the Backrooms, the movie, more interesting, because this movie is a fantastic sort of showcase of so much of this, what has become long internet history and long aesthetics of art that were really created by a generation of people who were nostalgic for a specific time in a way that is both sad, maybe, and a little bit scary, and playing with this concept of memory and dreams and early technology aesthetics. And this movie showcases it. And I think what a perfect person to not only showcase this, but to create the art to the Backrooms concept. So he is borrowing from a lot of creators. It is difficult to say that there is any one idea that is truly original to him, and that is not a knock on him as a director or as an artist, but I think that this movie has an incredible homage to a lot of those original artists. In the first few openings of the movie and some of the scenes, we see a lot of that dreamcore in the sort of real world, even down to, you see that little balloon from the eye thing up in the background of a shot of the store, and you see a lot of stuff in the therapist's office that is using a lot of the furniture and things that are very popular. That the movie is plastered with this sort of dreamcore music scoring. Even at one point, the characters say trying to describe what the Backrooms is, and they say, imagine describing a dog to someone and then having them draw it for the first time. They're not going to get all the details right. That phrasing is pulled directly from some of the original lores online as describing what is the Backrooms and what is a liminal space. So there is this movie, to me, I think represents so many awesome things, and regardless of how good the movie is or is not, I think it's a really cool moment in history. I think it's a great piece of cinema because of what it represents. Now, did I like the movie? Not really. I think the Backrooms' biggest thing that it suffers from was a lack of story, honestly. It is not a concept that does well, I think, in a long format. Much like a lot of horror movies, I think it would have been better served as a short. But if you had to make that Backrooms short into a full-length feature film, this is what you get. You don't want to give away you can't over-explain the Backrooms, you can't over-explain the concept, because that takes away from the very thing that makes it special. That also takes away its ability to have sequels. It is something that just is sort of left up to the imagination and is left up to the viewer, and they do a lot of that. It is very ambiguous and very metaphorical and very interpretive. And while I don't think that is a bad thing, there just wasn't enough there to make it a good story. So to be more specific, there's 3 moments where characters are introduced to the Backrooms. But it's a universe, if you haven't seen it. We'll just put it like that. They're introduced to this new world, this new universe. And each time it happens, from an editing standpoint, from the way it's built and paced, it feels like we as the audience are experiencing it for the first time. That's great for the first character, but by the third character, you're sitting, oh my God, get on with it, right? So there is a problem with that. There also was a moment where there's this great collage where they are introducing so many new aspects to the Backrooms visually, and it's a nice moment where they're paying homage to all the different art styles that have existed around liminal space, but it happens so fast and then it's over and we never revisit those concepts. So it's just posing a lot of questions all the time and you never get any answers. Arguably, you don't even get any answers at the end, and that's okay because that's kind of the point. But when you're sitting through an almost 2-hour movie and you never get an answer to the question, you find yourself getting bored. You find yourself getting bored with the concept because you know that they are never going to provide you with any more answers. This is a movie that is so aesthetically heavy. Every aspect of the movie relies on the aesthetics. The soundscapes are really nice. The visuals were really nice. All of the Blender and 3D environments were really seamless. There was a lot of care and thought put into the POV of the, even just getting the electric zoom to look correctly and the sound and the character reaction. I mean, technically this movie, aesthetically this movie really nails it on the head. But from a storytelling perspective, I found it to just fall really flat. Now, that's just me personally. I'm not even saying that it's a negative thing in terms of like somebody could have done something better. I don't know. I think I think he does this very well, is much like his YouTube videos where it's a lot of questions, but you don't have to sit through 2 hours of it. Some of his videos are rather long, but I think the future of this, I was talking to my brother a little bit about it. It has the same legs in terms of a vehicle that like Paranormal Activity is, where the concept is so free-formed and so like putty. It's so moldable because there's no questions, or there's no answers, only questions. I can see more directors taking this project on in sequels, many down the road. I could see it being something interesting each time potentially because the aesthetic is so good and there's such a rich culture of ideas behind this concept. I think it's a lot of pressure to put on any one person, but I think over time you could see a movie that does something a little bit more interesting with this. But I think it was a great step into taking this very short form conceptual idea that exists mostly in text and short videos online. It's very experimental, and giving it this legitimacy of a full-length feature film. To take that first step into that environment is very bizarre and I think difficult to navigate. So I think that as more iterations of it come forward, this is just the new version, the new world or medium that the Backrooms concept is taking over. So I look forward to seeing it. That being said, I have to give the movie about a 7 out of 10, I'm gonna say. I really liked it for its technical effects. I really loved it for what it represented. Me personally, I was super entertained watching it, but when I think about like Sam, who went into it very cold, not knowing anything about it, having no emotional attachment to the source material, looking at it through that lens, what a boring movie and kind of what a not very enjoyable movie all through. So Backrooms, I don't recommend you see it in theaters as much as I want to, because I want it to do well financially. I think it's doing fine. I think it's doing more than fine. But I don't think it's worth paying money. I think it's definitely a streamable movie, just because I think it's just a high probability that people are going to be pretty split on how they feel about this movie. So yeah, that's the Backrooms.